It concludes with the UFC panicking moments before a billion-dollar headliner implodes on itself. And yes, I am giving you the ending first, because you need to feel the dread before we rewind. Because none of this mayhem makes sense until you grasp how a single grainy image.
Rumors have been swirling that Justin Gaethje is injured. A few videos have surfaced of him diving and cracking heads with someone, which wobbled him bad. Do you have any inside information? Have you not heard of
One dark spot on Justin Gaethje's neck detonated the lightweight division and exposed fractures the promotion has been masking for months. Now snap back with me, because yesterday, this card was meant to be ironclad, the centerpiece of a new era, the shiny opening act of a monster broadcast deal.
Grown hair is what he's claiming.
Okay. Right.
Ingrown hair and a bit of brisket. Yeah.
Brisket?
Yeah, a little brisket on the chin.
Because they said he had hairpiece on his mouth. He's like, I was eating brisket and I had an ingrown hair.
If that is an ingrown hair, that's the gnarliest ingrown hair I've ever seen. That makes like a little red dot on your neck if it's an ingrown hair. He had a crater in his neck. I don't know about that.
And suddenly, the whole thing is wobbling because fans saw that mark and said, no, this cannot be real. Not now. Not on this card. Not when everything relies on Gaethje walking clean to the cage. You felt it immediately. The way timelines froze. How whispers turned into accusations.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this?
I do know
exactly where you're going.
Enter Armin.
Yes.
Enter Armin.
Yes, it's time. Now, is Armin ready is the thing. Now, when he walks out to those videos.
No, but
oh my God.
Enter Armin.
Enter Armin. Walking out there, eating a turkey leg. I mean, come on.
185-pound catch weight.
What a moment, though. Wouldn't that kind of be the best thing for the UFC?
And then an eating contest.
Yeah. Oh my God. Him and Paddy. Yes.
I'm legitimately though. I don't think Armin Tsarukyan could make weight on this short of a time frame.
Try him.
Because staph isn't merely an infection in MMA. It is a death sentence for events. It is the word that cancels flights and shreds contracts, and the UFC knows that. Which is why the silence felt louder than any confirmation ever could. Then Gaethje speaks up.
I think Ilya and Armin are the two best guys in the world. I think they need a fight at some point because I think Paddy Pimblett is awesome. Justin Gaethje is awesome. Armin and Ilya seem to have something. And not only something in terms of skill, but between the two that we could build a great fight around, right? So yeah, I think Armin's fantastic though, man. He's good. He looked great against Dan Hooker too.
In your opinion, why UFC is not giving Arman a title fight?
I don't know. I don't know why Armin's not fighting for a title. I really don't. I've heard the reason because of what happened in Los Angeles. I thought that by weighing in as the backup fighter when Ilya fought Charles, and then by going and fighting Charles Oliveira or Dan Hooker, it would be okay. I don't know. I don't know what the conversations that they're having behind closed doors are, because they're telling him something that's making him okay with it, right? Because if he wasn't okay with it, he would be more loud about him not getting his opportunity. Yeah. So I kind of defer to, they know more than we do. And so we got to kind of accept it for what it is, because it seems like Armin is doing that too.
Voice steady, tone casual, claiming it's merely an ingrown hair. Nothing serious, healing up fine, and that should have settled it, right? But it didn't. Because when stakes are this high, reassurance sounds like deflection, and people started asking why now.
The agreement by all, we're good. I believe that. Some people say, then Chael, why isn't he fighting for the belt? Well, I'll tell you why. He got put in what was known as a #1 contenders match in November. But that was supposed to draw into Ilya, who then says he's not going to be present, and they decide they're going to contest the title in January. So that would be a turnaround for Tsarukyan from November to January. And it's just very quick. I think that Tsarukyan's next fight is going to be for the title. That may end up being interim, that may, right? I mean, it's one of these things. It's one of these things that's got some moving parts. We don't all know yet what an interim belt is. We don't know. we largely agree as a community that at a minimum, an interim belt makes you the #1 contender for the undisputed belt. But when we saw that Aspinall had to wait as the interim champion, we found out that that wasn't completely right. So, but hear me out, because we would think that Paddy Gaethje, if Ilya returns, we then got to go do that match. That could delay the championship opportunity of Sarukian, but that's not because of a penance. You see the difference? Like we would have to do that. That wouldn't be a penance to Arman. We would have to give the interim champion the undisputed champion.
Why this photo? Who leaked it? And what else aren't they telling us yet? Because be honest, this bout was already perched on a fault line. And you know it. I know it. Everyone pretending otherwise is lying to themselves.
We all know that Arman Tsarukyan is the rightful #1 contender. The UFC decided to go the route of Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. Tell me this, how does Justin Gaethje go from getting knocked out by a featherweight to beating a #12 ranked Rafael Fiziev to now getting an interim title shot? Paddy Pimblett kind of made sense just because of the amount of hype he has. But then Justin Gaethje, yes, he's a big name, but he's been doing absolutely nothing but threatening to retire if he doesn't get a title shot. They obviously didn't want Justin Gaethje to retire, and they obviously didn't want to feed Paddy Pimblett to Arman Tsarukyan, and then they also didn't want to give Arman Tsarukyan the next title shot. So an interim title between Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje makes the most sense for them, apparently. If you had told me after that Jared Gordon fight that Paddy Pimblett would be 3 fights away from getting a title shot, bro, I would have crashed out. Look at Paddy Pimblett's last few wins. Bobby Green, who was on a 1-fight win streak, and then he beat Tony Ferguson, who was on like a 20-fight losing streak, and then he beat Michael Chandler, who, come on.
Because the interim title itself feels unstable, like a placeholder built on marketing math instead of competitive truth. And that tension was just waiting for a spark. That spark is named Arman Tsarukyan, and his shadow is all over the situation. Because every time the UFC pushes Paddy Pimblett forward, it feels like they are stepping around Arman instead of through him. And fans sense that dodge even if they can't articulate it yet. 5 straight wins, killers on the record, a skill set nobody wants to deal with. And still he is watching from the outside, while a hype wave crashes straight into gold, and you expect people not to question it when the whole card suddenly looks fragile. And don't claim this is simply business without consequences, because this is how bitterness breeds. Quietly backstage when fighters realize wins aren't the currency anymore.
That night 8 years ago, what's like the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that fight with Justin?
That I'm glad it's over and I never want to do it again. I'm like, the fans don't ever ask for a rematch or anything like that, because that would have never. I'm like, I'm glad. He's unique, man, and he's one of my favorite guys to watch. So like, but if you want to beat Justin Gaethje, you have to. So he's a forward fighter and a pressure fighter that he will stand in the pocket. And he's gonna throw everything he got in that pocket. If you don't meet him, you'll get chewed up. So Paddy, the way to beat a guy who like does this, very violent, aggressive pressure fighter, you have to meet him. You have to throw when he throws. So you got to be brave, and you have to go when he goes in between his shots. If you do that, you got a fair shot. If you don't do that, if you're not brave and courageous and throw when he throws in between his shots, it's going to be a really long night. It's going to be a hard night for you.
Attention is. And that is when divisions stop being ladders and start being lotteries. Pimblett delaying his birthday, smiling for the cameras, saying all the right things. That is not confidence.
They're not even, like, they're just basically saying Paddy's more popular, you're getting it over Arman.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, right? And that's, I mean, God, I hate like how I kind of get into this too much, but I mean, that's really like, that's the definition of, monopoly, where a single promoter owns the title and the rankings. And it's not a good thing for the sport, in my opinion. And I have to question what it's going to do for the longevity of the sport. I don't think in the short term it's really going to make a big difference, right? Like, it's going to sell the next fight, right? It's going to sell the next pay-per-view. But trends tend to come and go, right? Fads tend to come and go. At some point, like, to have staying power and lasting power, I think it requires, a meritocracy-based system. It's going to require, some, if you want to bring in guys like Arman Tsarukyan or Movsar Evloev, I always mess up how I say his name. You want to bring in these Olympic wrestling level guys. I mean, they don't want to have to go out there and put on some ridiculous show to become a champion. They don't want to have to go on Instagram and start a podcast and make whatever kind of skits on social media and this silly kind of stuff. Like, they just want to be a world champion because they want to be the best athlete. And that's what makes me wonder how the staying power is going to be, right? When you're dealing with guys that are, legitimate athletes that want to be legitimate athletes, and they're getting passed up by guys that are entertainers.
That is awareness. He knows this moment is borrowed time, because if anything goes wrong, if Gaethje sneezes the wrong way, the conversation flips instantly and someone else steps in. Here's where it gets awkward, because if Gaethje truly can't go, the UFC faces a nightmare decision: double down on the narrative they sold or quietly correct it. And the most obvious correction is the guy they already told to wait his turn. Picture that irony for a moment. The whole promo machine folding back on itself because a medical scare forces merit back into the picture. And tell me that doesn't feel like the kind of twist this sport loves to spring when nobody's ready, and don't sleep on the rumors around training either. Because when footage leaks of Pimblett getting tapped in a gym tournament, people say it doesn't matter, but deep down they are filing it away, connecting dots, wondering if this jump came a little too fast, too loud, too soon. Eddie Alvarez wasn't talking just to talk when he warned about Gaethje pressure. He was pointing at a cliff because Gaethje doesn't test skill first. He tests nerve. And if you are figuring that out live under interim title lights, that is how careers tilt overnight. The most alarming part is how silent the UFC has gone since that photo surfaced. Because silence at this level usually means options are being weighed, calls are being made, contingency plans drafted, and somebody somewhere is being told to stay ready just in case. Ask yourself this: if this was really nothing, truly nothing, wouldn't they want to bury it fast? Wouldn't they want to flood the feed with reassurance? Because instead it feels like they are letting the tension breathe, and that usually means something is shifting behind the curtain. So yeah, maybe it is just an ingrown hair. Maybe this all blows over by tomorrow. But if it doesn't, if even one doctor hesitates, this card doesn't just change. It exposes the entire philosophy behind it. And once fans see that clearly, there is no unseeing it. And that is when things really get dangerous. And the more I think about it, the more it feels like this whole situation was always going to crack eventually. Because when you build a headliner on momentum rather than inevitability, all it takes is one rumor, one photo, one shaky explanation for the audience to realize the foundation was never as solid as it was sold. This is what happens when the UFC tries to sprint past the natural order. Because divisions have memories. Fighters remember who was skipped, fans remember who was ignored, and when pressure hits, all that buried tension comes roaring back like it has been waiting for permission. I keep returning to Arman Tsarukyan because his name keeps rising without anyone saying it aloud, like an unspoken contingency plan, and that silence around him feels intentional, almost strategic, like they are hoping he stays quiet just a little bit longer. But here's the thing. Silence only works until chaos needs a solution. And when that moment comes, the UFC doesn't get to pretend rankings don't matter, because suddenly they will matter a lot, and that pivot will tell us everything about how real this system actually is. People act like this is just another event, but it isn't. This is the first impression of a new broadcast era, the show that is supposed to scream stability and dominance, and instead it is whispering uncertainty before the poster even cools. And let's not lie to ourselves about Paddy either, because I like the kid. He is entertaining, he is fearless, but this jump is violent. And violent jumps either make legends or leave scars that never quite fade the same way. The reason the calf slicer footage stuck wasn't because he tapped. It was because it reminded everyone that development is messy and title fights are unforgiving, and those two things don't always mix well when forced together. Gaethje, on the other side, represents the opposite energy. Earned violence, years of damage, years of proof, but also years of wear. And that neck photo hit harder because people already expect something to eventually give with him. That is the part nobody wants to say, because Justin is respected, but respect doesn't cancel time. And when the body shows even a hint of rebellion, the internet smells blood instantly. If this fight endures, it lives under a microscope. Every move, every warm-up clip, every close-up shot becoming fuel for paranoia. Because doubt once introduced never really leaves the room. And if it doesn't survive, if the UFC has to pivot, the fallout won't just be logistical, it will be philosophical. Because suddenly the argument about merit versus market explodes into reality instead of podcasts. Do you think Tsarukyan stepping in wouldn't shift the temperature instantly? Wouldn't rewrite the narrative overnight? Wouldn't make people question why that wasn't the plan from the start? That is the danger here. Because once fans see an alternative that feels more honest, it is hard to sell them the shortcut. Again, without resistance. They also can't ignore how quiet Dana has been. Because when Dana talks early, it is confidence. When Dana waits, it is calculation. And calculation usually means the board is being reset behind the scenes. There is a version of this where everything goes smoothly, and the fight happens, and the noise fades. But even in that version, the seed is planted, and seeds don't care about promotional timelines. This division is already in a weird place. Post-Islam, post-transition, and moments like this decide who defines the next era. Not press conferences, not trailers, moments of stress do. That is why this feels bigger than one mark on one neck, because it is exposing how fragile narratives become when reality pushes back even a little. If the UFC gets through this untouched, they will call it a win. But the fighters watching will remember how close the curtain came to tearing, and that memory shapes future leverage. And I keep getting this feeling, this uneasy pause, like there is another detail we haven't heard yet, another shoe that hasn't dropped, because situations this loud rarely end quietly. So yes, we are still waiting, still watching, and the terrifying part is knowing the next update, whenever it comes, might not calm anything down. It might just light the fuse everyone pretends isn't already burning.